listening to Never Off Duty. This week, we have a very special guest, a friend of mine and a great sheriff from Putnam County, Gator Deloach. And we are also joined by our own sheriff, not joined, she's here 99% of the time unless you're working, because she does have to work for you.
Unless I'm out fighting crime.
Michelle
That's
Cook.
right.
So, funny story about Sheriff Deloach, and I'm putting him on the spot here. It's
For the record, I don't know anything about this.
No, you don't.
Don't hold me
You don't.
accountable.
That's what's fun, because the people who are listening don't know what I'm going to do. I'm kind of a loose cannon. So, no, I'm not. So everybody in the political world, because sheriffs have to run for office, but on the state level and all that, they always say the exact same thing. They're like, "Oh man, he's got the best name in law enforcement." If I had to pick a Florida sheriff, I want him named Gator. So it's it's pretty cool. Cool. It is a nickname, just if
What
you're
is your
looking.
real first? I only know
Oh
about
no,
Gator.
I wasn't going to do that.
Are you really going to go there, Michelle?
I am.
My given name is Homer, and it was fine until The Simpsons came out years ago. So I prefer Gator.
Okay, we'll call him Gator. That's what I've known you
That's a
by, is
moniker
Gator.
my grandfather gave me. It's been with me ever since I was old enough to bite.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'd love to tell you there was some cool story about how I got the name, but
No cool story.
But with guys, it's usually
Your grandpa felt bad for you, so he called you Gator.
it's usually you're like 5 years old, and you do you bit somebody on playing basketball, and then they're like, "Look at that Gator," and then next thing you know, you're Gator for the rest of your life. That's how men work.
Do you know my nickname? Did you know my nickname growing up here?
I don't.
Missy.
Missy? Okay.
Yeah.
I have been thinking about this in preparation though for this interview. Is it's time for a new nickname. It's Machete.
Oh, dear Lord. We had to go there. Judson.
Sheriff Machete Cook.
Oh, nice.
I'm sorry.
That was, yeah. Just wait till we get off air.
I know.
You're
But
in
I
big
actually
trouble.
think it's awesome.
I'm having your car towed right now out of your
probably
driveway. Yeah.
No, it was finally, I saw the picture on Facebook. And again, for our listeners, from the textbook policing side of it was perfect. Like you de-escalate the situation and all that. But of course, being Clay County and our Putnam County, which our two counties are so similar with attitudes towards life, they're like, yeah, you took down a guy with a machete. That's the
right.
That's
right.
the.
I didn't even tell anybody that happened.
I know.
Mean, the deputy that came and put him in the back of the car, she knew. And so like a week later, one of my directors says, "Hey, my friend just sent me this picture of you. What is this?" And it was that picture. I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
Oh, that's what I love about, smaller areas. We're not small, but there's Putnam, but we're not Jacksonville big.
Sure.
But that's the sewing circle rumor mill, because it's like, right. I saw the picture. Like, people are like, "This is our sheriff." It's just going around. People are texting people.
Oh, yeah.
That happens a lot. You get involved in a call for service or something, or just something as benign as doing a traffic stop. I try not to even call them out on the radio anymore if I can help it, because next thing I know, there's 87 deputies on top of me, and I'm like, I'm fine. I can handle it.
And then the citizens hanging out the window, Gator! You're a sheriff! Get him!
And then I'm surprised they don't ask for a picture. Like, you're pulling somebody over, like, "Oh, it's the sheriff pulling me over. Can you take a picture? Can we put this on TikTok?"
Well, it's actually been about a month or so ago. I did a traffic stop. I had my oldest son in the truck with me, and this guy blew past us at about 95. We caught him fairly quickly. He slowed down a little bit, and he was going over to a car show in Gainesville, and he says, "Oh, man," he said, I got pulled by the big dog. So, of course, I let him go, but he had to take a selfie with me on the way to the car show so that he had proof he could show all his friends at the sheriff.
Was he coming from Clay County? Because if so, I know who it was.
That's his get out of jail picture that he's got on his cell phone. Right. I know Gator.
That is funny. That'll be a good question to ask. So you can think about this. What's your most crazy, like, I accidentally mentioned I'm doing something stop? Because I know one day we'll have to get now Congressman Rutherford, but Sheriff Rutherford on, because he's got the best story about when he did a stop, and it was like the entire JSO showed up, and he was like in a suit, and then he had but it did escalate. Like, he had to tackle a guy, and because the guy was trying to run into oncoming traffic.
He was a good policeman. I worked for him, and actually when he was my captain, I believe, I was a street officer in Jacksonville, and he would come right along with me. So he was a good policeman.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
a very good policeman, yeah.
And it seems like every sheriff I know, and I'm fortunate to know a lot of y'all, is, very unafraid to do the work. And I wondered, and this is where the question comes from. Do you ever go like, I'm just done with office work today. I'm done with administration. I just need a moment to do some basic work like I used to.
That's like a thought that's like omnipresent in my brain all the time because
Right.
I don't work well sitting behind a desk. In fact, I try and avoid it at all costs, in spite of the fact that it's a necessary part of what I do. But I try and stay out of the office and out interacting with folks as much as I can.
Yeah, that's me too. You have to go to the office to sign paperwork and for meetings, but even if I'm driving from meeting to meeting, I'm listening to the radio.
Sure.
I'm scanning for suspicious activity, anything like that. I think if you were born a policeman, and even if you are the sheriff, you still have that inclination to be involved and to help and to watch for suspicious or bad things happening.
Yeah, what do you miss the most about when you started your career? And you both get to answer this because I've never asked you this either. I'm pointing to Michelle, by the way. I'll have to start remembering that people can't see what we're doing.
Please refer to us as Missy and Gator.
Sorry, yes.
This interview.
Sorry. But what do you miss most about, we'll start with Gator as our guest.
I would love to tell you that everyone gets into law enforcement for a completely altruistic purpose. But the fact of the matter is that's just not the case. Any good cop, in my opinion, is an adrenaline junkie. And, we're always looking for that next dopamine dump, that adrenaline high. And that's something that, we unfortunately chase it. It just comes with the territory. So, I miss getting out there and actually working the street and, interacting with the deputies on a daily basis. And I do it as much as I can, just like Michelle does, but I miss that the most.
Okay. And what about you, Sheriff Cook? Missy,
yeah.
Machete.
No, Machete. Oh, Judson.
That's Miss Machete.
I think what Gator just said, I miss being on the street. I miss, I really thrive in chaos. I'm one of those people, the more chaotic it is, things sort of slow down in my mind. And I become calmer in chaos, which is interesting because when it's really quiet and boring, I'm the person tapping my foot and twiddling my thumbs.
I'd have to agree. I'm the same way.
Yeah. I like police work. I really like police work. I like it. It sounds sort of cliche. I like protecting the community, and if I can help prevent somebody from being victimized, or catch somebody who's just victimized a person, then I find a lot of satisfaction in that.
And that's that altruistic side that I'm talking about. And I think that each of us has a good, healthy dose of that. And that's important because that's really what drives us. But the other part of it is that adrenaline seeking behavior that we all have in us. Some just got a little bit healthier dose than others, like Michelle and I, Miss Machete.
Boy.
I think too, I know this from running a business standpoint. When you're one of the crew, there's a camaraderie and, or a soldier, you're in the troops. But then once you get tapped up for leadership, there's a little bit of a distance. And I miss that. I miss you're kind of, the higher up you get, the more alone you get. And I think that y'all are lucky because you have, great undersheriffs. And I know each of you have people that you can trust, and that is great. But I imagine there's that too. You miss at least when I'm watching TV, you see on TV the buddy and I know we don't really have the paired off detectives that do everything together, but there's that camaraderie that you kind of have to, when you transfer to especially the top level, you miss.
One of my mentors in law enforcement once said to me as I was starting to promote up, remember, leadership is lonely. And, I do miss the camaraderie at the street level and the jokes and the fun and, but also at the same time, for me, it's, going up in rank and then knowing how police officers operate, knowing how deputies operate, and doing everything you can to advocate for them and advocate for the profession. is just the new norm, the new calling.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it does get a little lonely at the top. But it's nice for me also coming up in the sheriff's office and moving up through the ranks. Unfortunately, there's not too many folks left from whenever I first started that haven't retired or moved on somewhere else for whatever their case may be. But you're right. It does get lonely at the top sometimes.
All right. So let's go back in time now. So I like to start with a topic that just gets us talking and then start from the basics. I want to, this is our opportunity to interview because, it's a little bit of a drive. It's actually not. Green Cove is literally 5 minutes from Putnam County.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of more aligned with Putnam County than it is the rest of Clay County, which is kind of interesting as far as, northern Clay is a lot more Jacksonville-ish.
Don't even say that. I know.
I was trying to think of the better word. City-ish. City-ish. Let's say
Judson,
city.
Judson.
It's more city-like. But anyways.
Urbanized.
Yeah, that's another way to say it. So, but this is our opportunity. And obviously we hope we have you on as much as you'd like. But what is, so tell us how you got your start in law enforcement.
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. We'd have to go way, way back in history. As it turns out, I had an uncle who was a state trooper, worked for the Florida Highway Patrol. And whenever I was a young boy, I would spend some time at their house right here in Middleburg, as a matter of fact, just down the road from here. Jim would put me in the front seat of his patrol car, and they had a long driveway. So we'd go up to check the mail, and he'd put his trooper hat on me and turn the lights on and let me play with the siren. And I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. So one day for my birthday, he gave me a little teardrop dash light. And we were living in Bostwick at the time and had a really long driveway. My mom had an old, I don't know, probably a early 80s model Buick Riviera. And I would make my older brother put me in that Riviera. I would sit on the armrest and put that little teardrop light up in the dash and run up and down the driveway. I would do it all day long, or as long as he would allow me to, with that little blue light. And it just lit a fire that never went out. I wasn't supposed to go into law enforcement, though. And I haven't really shared this with a lot of people because it embarrassed me for a long time, but I've since gotten over myself. I was supposed to go to medical school, and I squandered an opportunity to do that. I'd been given an opportunity at a private scholarship to the medical school of my choice. And as I made my way through school, I just came to the realization that I didn't want the commitment that went along with it. So I passed up that opportunity, and then shortly thereafter enrolled in the police academy, much to my mother's dismay, I might add. And I think I did it for a number of reasons, probably not the least of which was to make her mad, because I think as, in our late teens, early 20s, I think that's everyone's goal, is to offend their parents in the most ridiculous way possible. And I thought, what a better way to thumb my nose at my parents than to go into law enforcement. So to say they were upset is probably a gross understatement. Now, of course, they're incredibly proud of the accomplishment.
Yeah, in hindsight, they're going, "Wow, this was a great choice." Yeah.
Do we have to call you Dr. Deloach now? That's what crossed my brain.
Well, I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last
You did.
night.
That's right. That's funny.
You know what? I know you, and I know a little bit about the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. Tell us about the Putnam County Sheriff's Office, if you don't mind.
I may be a little partial, but out of the 67 counties in the state, Putnam to me is like, it's
Number
like
two?
it's like the gateway to heaven. You have to pass through Putnam County to get to heaven.
There you go.
And to be clear, just so everybody listening understands, both Sheriff Cook and myself have houses in Putnam County. We love Putnam County too, so it's not like we're not. And
so you clearly know that Putnam County is gone.
I mean, we love Clay too, but
yes. Go ahead, Gator, Dr. Gator.
No, the sheriff's office. It's one of the greatest, and I'm very fortunate. I've got a fantastic staff. I was smart enough to realize early on that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So I took an opportunity and surrounded myself with some really good, qualified people with natural leadership abilities. And we've accomplished some great things just in the last 5 or 6 years. It's pretty incredible. It may take me just a second to pull it up, but interestingly enough, the Chamber of Commerce reached out to us because they had a company that was looking to relocate to Putnam, and they were doing their due diligence, looking at the area, the school system, crime, all those metrics that people look at whenever they're looking to relocate. And they asked us for just a couple of little tidbits of information they could share with them. So here were some takeaways from the data that we collected. So in the unincorporated areas of Putnam County, where the sheriff's office is the sole provider of law enforcement services, crime is down over 50% in 5 years. Now, if you include all the municipalities, so incorporate back in those numbers for the city of Palatka,
Right.
Willaca, Crescent City, Interlochen, all those municipalities, crime is still down 42%.
Which I'll explain that once you're done with that, because
Yes.
that's a point that people need to understand.
So our crime rate is actually lower now than many of our surrounding counties, to include Alachua, Marion, Bradford, and Volusia. Not Clay yet.
Not Clay
We're
yet.
catching you.
Yeah, not
We're
So
on
Clay
your
yet.
Sheriff
heels.
Cook was looking at Gator like, you
Not
better.
Clay yet. Not Clay yet.
If looks could kill. So this is the first year that we're actually lower than Bradford, and in all sincerity, we are quickly gaining on Clay. Like I said, I'm so blessed that I've got such a very capable and gifted staff that really has a heart for service and for leadership, and that's what I attribute all my success to.
You guys
great.
run the jail too. You guys run the county jail?
We do, yes.
Yeah. How many people? What's your inmate population? Typically?
So I don't know what today is. Yesterday, I think we were at 387 inmates.
Okay, so you're not
Which,
too far behind
for
us.
me, you could have been like, this year. And I'd be like, okay. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, we sit we're-
yesterday. I love that you had yesterday stuff.
Well, hey, listen,
I know
the
it
jail
changes.
is one of your biggest liabilities as a sheriff, so you're always dialed in on what's happening at the jail. Our daily inmate population is sitting between 430 and 440 right now. And so, that's something that you've got to pay attention to.
Right. It tells you what's going on.
We're a little high at almost 390. We've got there's about 50 inmates that are awaiting DOC committals.
Department of Corrections.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, cop lingo.
Yep. Usually I catch it. So good job, Sheriff
Yeah.
Cook.
Thank you.
So, we've got about 50 out there sitting in just kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to get shipped off to Department of Corrections somewhere. And there's a lot of things at play there, but recently, one of the circuit court judges moved back over to St. John's, and then there was a vacancy that was created at the county court level whenever Judge Boatwright moved to the 5th District Court of Appeals. So we've had a lot of visiting judges that have came in and sentenced people, and we're appreciative for that. But sometimes what happens is there's a backlog on getting those committals back from them, because they'll sentence them, and their judicial assistant will sometimes just forget to push the committal paperwork in front of the judge to get their signature on it, and it takes a little longer.
Right.
So we're comfortable at about 330 inmates or so. Ideally we'd like that number to be 0, but
That's just the world we
It's
live
not
in.
reality.
not
Yeah.
reality.
I mean, we've talked about this a lot in the show. Actually, I don't know if you might have been not here that day. I think Deputy Ford and I talked about that. And you can chime in your thoughts. I have my theory, or you can pass.
Or you pass.
My theory is there are just some evil people in this world.
There is.
And there's just, I mean, I know there are people who do bad things because of circumstances. I will not deny that in a hard time. You can always look at wartime of what like a mother will do to protect a child. And if you look at the history of warfare and, people will do things. But there's also, and I'm sure y'all have witnessed this in your career, where you've met a person and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this
evil.
is what evil is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, so I mean, we'll never be a society of zero. I mean, we could be, but we would have to do some draconian measures of, that nobody in our society is going to want to do. But yeah, you could get there, but you're going to, I mean, we have to go back to the Roman society where you're basically either, death penalty or time served quickly and you're done.
There's a cost with everything.
Yeah. And nobody's willing
And
to do
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on this. And Gator, I don't know if you would agree, but I think there's good people who make bad mistakes, like a dumb mistake. Like they're good, they just made a dumb mistake. There's people who they know they're making a mistake, but their circumstances sort of drive them to that. And then there's people who have...
Oh, yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
Then there's people who have mental health, drug, or alcohol issues.
Yes.
And that leads them down a path of crime. And then there's evil people.
There's just downright evil.
There's just evil. Yeah. I mean, I've seen evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I agree.
And so, I think there's different categories of criminals, and you have to act accordingly and treat them accordingly.
Sure,
absolutely. So I wanted to talk about the crime stats because this is a pet peeve of mine, and I know it is of yours. I'm pretty sure, but the problem is y'all are not in charge of certain areas of your county, and sometimes, especially press, loves to blame. The bigger entity, which the sheriff's office, the sheriff's office are always bigger than your local police departments. There's nothing against the local police departments. We have some excellent ones, and you do too. But the reality is, if there's crime in an area, you can't stop crime in an area you can't police.
Well, I tell you what I dislike even more, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but what I don't like is the year-over-year crime view, because if I have 4 burglaries last year and 2 this year, does it mean that my crime is down 50%? I think, and then we will never get to net zero. So I wish there was a different way to look at crime stats as opposed to, it's traditionally the media that says, well, crime is up or crime is down. Well, you also have to look at population, weather impacts crime. I mean, there's so many things that impact crime, and we'll never get to net zero. And so when people say, well, our crime's down 100%, did it go to net zero or what? That to me is, I think we do, and I understand why it started in the beginning, but it's a little bit of a disservice overall, I think.
No, I agree. And, it's a lot easier to, to measure things statistically like that in larger areas where you're having more occurrences. Let's take homicide, for example. It's not common, but it's not unprecedented for us to go a year without a homicide. The following year, we may have 4 homicides. So statistically, you're looking at a 400% increase in homicides. And that's what troubles me is when the media uses, clickbait like that, information that's on its face might be accurate, but there's more to the story than just a 400% increase in homicides.
It could have been a horrible domestic situation.
Right.
And again, going back to crime and crime stats, this is probably true in Putnam, but in Clay County, the vast majority of our violent crime, which our violent crime numbers are very low, are people who know each other. And so, that to me is a little bit different than I call it stranger danger crimes, where I'm coming out of the grocery store and I get robbed. That is extremely rare in Clay County. Putnam County is probably the same way. People know each other.
In Putnam, absolutely, yeah. I totally agree with that.
Well, and that's the problem is if you have I can equate it to the my world, which is if you are a company with 1,000 employees and you have one employee have a horrible injury that was a result of negligence. From the insurance industry, that's not a big deal because you have 1,000 employees. But if you have 20 employees and somebody breaks their leg, it's a huge deal.
Sure.
And it's like, but it just doesn't match up. It's in a city with, like you said, the bigger the numbers, the easier it is to hide that. It's almost it'd be in your advantage to have. I hate to say it, but as far as the press is concerned, to have that consistent. Versus we had 0. Like 0 is bad because the next year you get 1. That's a big.
It's 100% increase.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And unfortunately, a lot of press won't report on that. So it's it bothers me. So I wanted to get that out there. So we talked about the makeup of your department, and I wanted to talk about this because now you started or at least one part of your career, you were on the dive team.
I was, yes.
And now were you? So always fascinates me because I love diving. Was that where was that in your career? What was your career path? Did you start? I mean, everybody starts on patrol.
Sure. So I'll kind of give you the Reader's Digest version of what my career track looked like. I started as a young deputy in patrol and did a couple of years in patrol, then transitioned over to our youth resource unit and was the youth resource deputy at Interlochen High School on the west end of our county, which coincidentally is where I met my wife. And no, she was not a student at the time. She was actually the cheerleading coach. Let's get that out there. Funny story about that I'll share with you either later today or maybe at a future time. But did a couple of years in youth resource at the high school there, and then went into investigations. And it was unique because at the time we had an investigator that was assigned to youth resource, and I was responsible for any serious felony crimes that occurred on a school campus, whether it was a fire alarm that was pulled or bomb threats, large thefts, and all the missing persons cases in the county I was assigned to as well. Did that for a couple of years, and then got a little deeper into investigations and became part of our drug and vice unit, and worked there for several years. While I was there, I handled a single-purpose narcotics detection dog, and really enjoyed that. While I was in the drug unit, I actually assumed a leadership role and was promoted to the rank of sergeant. Stayed in the unit for about another year and then transferred back into patrol as a shift leader with supervisory responsibilities. And did that for about another year and a half, almost 2 years. Went back into investigations as a supervisor over our property crimes unit, and while I was there, promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Spent another couple of years there. Got promoted to captain because of a vacancy that was created by retirement, and whenever I promoted to captain, I was assigned to administrative services, and that's kind of the catch-all for basically everything that no one else wanted to touch.
The business of running a sheriff's office. Yeah.
So, I had our communications center, our civil and records bureau, fleet, uniform and supply, school crossing guards, kind of everything ancillary to our law enforcement mission that supported what the law enforcement side of the house did. And that really kind of gave me that exposure to the other side of the house that I'd never gotten, and really set me up to assume my role as sheriff. But going back, I've been dive certified for years, and I think it was it must have been 2007 or 8, I guess. I got on the dive unit. No, it must have been before that. Let's say 5 or 6, I guess. Now, diving, law enforcement diving, it's really not anything sexy about it. Yeah. It's all dark water diving. You might as well
put your hand out and try to feel for bodies.
You might as well just take a mask and spray paint it black, and go swim around in the pool. And that's how you can tell if you're a good fit for dark water diving. It's really not fun. Like I said, there's nothing really sexy about it. And the unfortunate part is most of the time whenever we would deploy as a dive team, unfortunately, we're generally looking for a body.
Yeah, that's the bad part. Yeah. I know. I've talked to you off before about this, so I knew that. But I felt like that was something to bring up that I don't think people realize. They think that there's a glamorous side, and there is a glamorous side. Let's be clear. I think
to being sheriff.
Okay. I will digress and say I always find it amazing because most sheriffs that I know are very humble. And I'm in the community doing other stuff, so I'm always hearing people like, oh, you think the sheriff might stop by? Like they get so excited, and I know you kind of know that, but again, y'all, you take it very well. But you're, as far as the community is concerned, you're the top figure in your community. You really are. I mean, we've got county commissioners, and they're very important. We have great ones. You have great ones. There's all these. We have state house people, state senators, and all that. We have Congress people, but yet they look to the sheriff as the leader of the community, even though you're not a lawmaking executive.
That's the interesting thing that you bring up. I was at the FSA yesterday talking to the Commanders Academy, and just how the office of sheriff in the state of Florida is framed. It really does make the sheriff, in many ways, maybe the word's not powerful, but the most visible, oftentimes the most visible elected official in every county. But you're right, and people do. And it may have something to do with the uniform,
I think so. And I think it's, I think you're exactly right, Missy. Machete.
Thank you, Gator.
I think it has a lot to do with the way the state constitution is framed and the responsibilities of the office of sheriff. And just by virtue of those responsibilities, generally the sheriff should be very visible and just naturally assumes kind of that leadership role because of that, I think.
Well, and I think it's created a great buy-in from private industries too, because your private businesses support, public company, any business supports your community. They put a lot of money in tax dollars and things like that into your community. And like you were saying, how the chamber, when a company's coming, they talking to the sheriff, being able to is a big deal of knowing, wow, there's a lot that can happen in this community with, my protection of my assets that I'm going to be bringing here.
Sure.
And it's kind of cool. And you don't experience that everywhere.
And I think both of you guys hit on something that a lot of people don't realize. We run a business. We run $1 million business with a lot of employees in a very high liability industry. And, it's funny because I will have people who will come to me, young deputies that'll come to me and say, I want to be a chief of police one day. I want to be a sheriff one day. And I'm like working administrative and business part of the agency, because there's plenty of people out there who've ridden a beat or been on the SWAT team or the dive team, but running the business of the sheriff is really a separator when you're going up in ranks.
No, you're exactly right. And, you touched on something earlier, Michelle, about a jail. I'll be perfectly candid with you. Whenever I took office, I knew I had a jail, and that was about the extent of my knowledge. There had been just a few select handful of times that I'd been beyond the booking desk, and that was mostly in an investigative capacity whenever we were in our old jail. And, we'd have a suicide attempt, and, of course, we'd always call investigators to look into those. And that's pretty much where my experience with corrections stopped. So that was certainly my biggest learning curve, and I'm still learning about corrections and that whole other discipline that we work in.
Yeah, I mean, detention corrections folks that are often behind the scenes do amazing work. They really have a tough job, and it's I know people tend to be drawn to the deputies on the street, and that's important, right? But the men and women who work behind the scenes in the jail, they do amazing work in very difficult circumstances. I don't know about your jail, but we have the dorm style pods, and so we'll have 30 or 40 inmates in a big room together, and that can get pretty sporty sometimes.
Yeah, it gets a little hairy. Similar situation in Putnam County. Certainly under-recognized and often underappreciated, but our corrections folks do a fantastic job and perform a very important function for us, and we'd be lost without them.
Well, yes, it's amazing. Both counties have some amazing people working for them, and I think we're very blessed. And I think a lot of that comes from the community, because both of our communities, again, are very back the blue.
Sure.
Which is funny because it's green, but
it's green.
But that's what it's been. Marketing has now made it. But it's pretty cool. So we're about to take a break. When we come back, we're going to ask you. I'm letting tease to make people stick around. We're going to ask about the craziest story, in your career. We've heard Sheriff Cook's, which I still want to give you hand sanitizer for.
The lady in the
lady
store?
throwing
Yes.
throwing feces at her. And was it a restaurant or a store?
It was a restaurant.
Oh, it even makes it worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it. It's like if you're in Walgreens, you're like, well, it's not great, but it's like, but there's food involved. I'm OCD, so yeah. But we're going to ask about that. I want to ask about the needs of your office. Since I've got both sheriffs here, I want to talk about the relationship between Florida sheriffs, because I think it's kind of cool that y'all meet and, things that people don't realize, the communication. And I'd also like to talk about, the relationship between, because you're adjoining counties, how does that work? Like if there's something going on, like a hurricane or a disaster, something bad, really bad, I mean, criminal wise, like, how that works, just some of the teases. And then, of course, I'm sure Sheriff Cook has some questions too. So we might not get to them all, but you're being teased on where we're headed in there. You're listening to Never Off Duty. I want to let you know to go to claysheriff.com. If you want an easy way to listen to it, there's a pop-up there, or just go to the many links we always post and subscribe, share, very important. You're listening to Never Off Duty. We are back to Never Off Duty. So I brought up something when Sheriff Cook first arrived and I forgot about it. So this is pretty cool. We want to thank y'all for listening, because our listenership has just drastically grown. And that a lot of that has to do with the more you listen to it, that helps algorithms. And two, a lot of people are sharing it. And what always shocks me is I kind of sometimes forget that I do this show.
Wow, that was strong.
I know. I'm going to be honest, because I mean, look, I've got a lot. I've got a young family. I'm active in the community.
got
I
a
run
business
to
to run,
run,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I enjoy doing this. It's it's something I enjoy doing. But then come Monday when I'm back at work, I kind of, until it's time to edit the show, I don't. I kind of put it out of my mind to do other things. I compartmentalize.
There you go. There you go.
So but people do this to me all the time, and I think more and more people are starting to either do it as a joke or because I made this comment once before, and I've had this happen a couple times. And this happened recently at a board meeting. The president of our board goes, I can get you into jail. He's a very great lawyer from Jacksonville, and I'm thinking, and he's a defense attorney. So I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like, immediately I'm not thinking of the fact that I've talked about touring I've toured several jails in our community. I've toured yours. I've toured Bradford counties. I haven't toured yours, Gator. But so he was saying,
welcome anytime.
Well, I know. Thank you. But it took me off guard. And he's like, I gave him that look, and he's like, I listened to your show, and I'm like, oh wow. And I had never told him about it. So that was really cool. But that's not the only time that's happened. I've had friends on the street mention things about the show, and I'm always taken off guard because they'll say something and I'm like, what are they talking about? And then it clicks.
And then there's a little bit of deja vu.
Yeah.
Like I've heard that before.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then it clicks, and then they get a good chuckle out of the fact that they were able to throw me off. So now that I've admitted that I often, as I go about my day, don't think about the show after I've listened to it and edited. Guys, I spend a lot of time on that. So when I'm done, I'm done.
All right, so I have a challenge for the community.
Oh, no.
Anybody that's listening, the next time you see Judson, walk up to him and say, "Never off duty."
And the sad part is, and those that know me best, is I will still have that moment of a goldfish look where I'm like,
What?
that's just weird. And then it'll click.
Oh, that's funny.
So we are joined, if you're for some weird reason coming in at the break and not listening to the first part, we're joined by the sheriff of Putnam County, Gator Deloach. If you're one of our, and we do have a lot of people. Like I'm always shocked because I get to see the statistics about, we've got a lot of people not in the state. Maybe they're using VPNs. I don't know. But the point is they're showing up as out of the state, some out of the country. So Clay County and Putnam County adjoin each other. They share a common border and very similar. You have these pockets of circles around big cities. I think that's the best way to describe it, where you've got city, then you usually have suburbs, and then you have more rural. But this is all changing because there's a big beltway coming in. That's something that we probably should eventually talk about. It's going to change Putnam. It's going to change Clay forever. It's going to change Putnam forever. I'm already hearing people in Clay County going, I want to be back to a more easier life, bigger land, things like that you can get in a lot of places that quite frankly you can't get here anymore. So they're moving to Putnam County. Bostock's going to change forever. That's a little town that we learned from the show that Gator grew up in. Beautiful town. They have a great blueberry festival if you get a chance to check it out. And that's going to change forever because it's so close to all these new developments. There's so much decisions that are going to have to be made by our community leaders, and you as sheriffs also have to deal with that rapid growth of population and changing, and it's y'all's departments are going to change drastically. So I've laid the groundwork. Now let's jump to some questions. I think we should start with the craziest story you've had. Whatever it could be crazy, it could be funny. What sits in your mind of? I heard one story, and I'm not going to share it because it might not be the one that you might have a better one, but it was hilarious to me. So, but let's hear yours.
Which one were you referring
this
to?
Was
there's so many.
This was an undercover one.
Around.
But this was.
We have an interrogation going on, folks.
This was an undercover one, and I'll leave it at that because he might not be able to talk about it because I understand how previous cases work.
Well, I think I know the one you're referencing. That was actually with a good friend who works down in Flagler County who was doing some undercover work. Yeah, we probably better not touch that one.
Yeah. Because undercover puts you in some strange situations.
Those get a little sorted from time to time.
Yeah. I actually couldn't. I see it from a watching TV standpoint, and I know, and you have done undercover yourself.
Yes.
Sheriff Cook, have you had to do undercover?
A little bit. I'm terrible at it because I'm a rule follower. I like to be in uniform and follow the rules, and working undercover, and just I'm a terrible liar. We're
going to have to get Sheriff Cook down to Putnam County and have her do a prostitution sting for us.
Well, that was what I did in Jacksonville a few times. And anyways, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. And suddenly, sheriff at claysheriff.com is swarmed with questions. All
right, so I'll tell you a funny story about undercover work, and I was not the undercover in this case, but we had a prostitute that would frequent the East Palatka area, and for those that are familiar with the area, she liked the Pico Road boat ramp over in East Palatka.
Okay, first of all, I gotta say that is the most this area, Southern Clay and Putnam thing you could say. They like the boat ramp. You know what I mean? Because the boat ramps are actually pretty fun areas.
Lots of entertainment.
You never know what is going to be lurking around the corner at the boat ramp. And I'll leave it at that. So we had this prostitute. Her name was Brenda, and I can't remember her last name. I think she's since deceased. But this, we're going back probably at least 15, almost 20 years ago. There was a good friend, Tim Brown, who was one of our detectives in the drug unit whenever I was running it. Tim actually ran for sheriff several years ago and was killed in a car crash.
Sorry.
I think in about 2008, 8 or 9, I think. He died in the crash, unfortunately. But this story is about Tim and some undercover work that he's doing. So Brenda was doing her usual routine, trying to drum up some business around the boat ramp. We knew that she was over there. We gotten several complaints about it. And we set Tim up in a truck, got the truck all wired up with all the video recording and audio equipment and everything. And we're in a surveillance van behind him, following from a distance. Well, the goal was to get for him to solicit whatever out of Brenda, and then his code word was Savannah. He would say something like, once the deal was done, "So I'm going to Savannah this weekend. What are your plans?" And that was our signal to come and arrest her, take her down. Well, they get in the truck and start having some conversation. And, Tim's talking to her about whatever sex act that he's proposing she perform. And they're talking about money. And, there are certain elements you've got to meet before you can make a case for prostitution. So we were young and having a little fun. So Tim says, "I'm going to Savannah this weekend. How about you, Brenda?" And we sit back and we're waiting. And I said, just wait a little bit.
Making this very uncomfortable for him. Savannah, Savannah, Savannah.
So all of a sudden, Tim says, I'm going to Savannah this weekend. How about you, Brenda? Have you ever been to Savannah? I hear Savannah's really nice this time of year. What do you think the weather's going to be in Savannah when we get up there this weekend? And we're all just rolling laughing, and you can tell there's a scuffle because Brenda has slid over in the seat next to Tim, and he is literally like forcefully pushing her off of it.
Nice.
So we had a little fun with it. Didn't go too far, and we took Brenda to jail, unfortunately for her.
And he probably got out of the car and called you guys all kinds of names.
I dare not say on the show what he called us, but I didn't think Tim was ever going to forgive us.
This actually leads me to something I think you sheriffs should do, because I wanted to talk about the relationship between sheriffs. I feel like you get a newly elected sheriff in Florida, and I think there's a meeting y'all go to like several times a year. I don't know. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think y'all should have a requirement that the new sheriff has to go, maybe just to make it, since y'all are busy, just let's pick three undercover in somebody else's county.
Oh,
so that fun. And y'all get to pick the assignment, and that's like the new. Well,
I like that.
You can't haze. It's not hazing.
No,
right.
It's just
we'll have to present that at the next.
It's an
sheriff's
initiation.
It's an
Yes.
initiation.
Oh, yeah, that would be hilarious. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That would be funny.
It would be funny if you saw some of these guys that are when they first get elected as sheriff. That would be really funny.
Well,
yes.
and also it's a little reminder about the humble beginnings. It's good. It'd be good, I think. And now I'm probably going to be ostracized by the new sheriff. In Florida.
Right. Don't let that guy near us. Don't let that guy near us.
They're going to go. It was y'all's fault that this happened. This never happened before.
And if it doesn't go over well, we'll be like, that was Judson's idea.
You can blame me. You can blame me. But yeah, let's talk about the relationships between sheriffs. So, and I do want to talk about the election process too, because that's important. I think people need to understand that sheriffs are elected.
Yes.
And it's very different from being hired like you are as a police chief.
Sure.
And I think all police chiefs, are there elected police chiefs anywhere, or is it all hired? I don't know.
There are 2 elected police chiefs in the state of Florida that I'm aware of. One is in Stark, and the other is in Funiac Springs in Walton County.
That's right. And I know the Stark police chief, so that's...
So Stark is elected police chief.
I should have known that.
And so is Defuniac Springs. And to my knowledge, those are the only 2 elected chiefs in the state.
Oh, wow. Well, okay.
I didn't know about Defuniac Springs. I knew about Stark, but interesting.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to hold on because since we just started talking let's talk about the elections part. We'll get to the sheriff's relationships in a second. So what are as a citizen, I think it's great. We've talked about, Sheriff Cook and I have talked about because you've worked as a hired police chief versus being elected. And I think some of the negatives of the hiring process is you're beholden to the law. Don't get me wrong. That's your top thing. And you're beholden to the Constitution, but you still are answerable to a very small group, which might have their own agenda, which I hate to say this, and it's not true here or in Putnam County, but there are counties in Florida where some members of politics have political agendas for their future that aren't necessarily in line with, look, I'm just being honest here. That's my take. As people sometimes make decisions that benefit them. And I'm not saying it's illegal what they're doing, but if it's legal and it benefits them, they might lead you down that path. So what I'm saying in a long way is by being elected, you're answering to a lot larger group. And that makes it...
That's right. And that's, to me, that's what's so unique about the office of sheriff in Florida is by design and, according to the way the Constitution was crafted in Florida, you are an independent constitutional officer that is that answers only to the electors, and that it's your responsibility to ensure that that you're doing their work, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's great. That's not to say that, look, many of our like I live here in Clay County. It's great. Our police chiefs are amazing, and they're lucky that they've got good council people to work with or commissioners to work with.
Sure.
And that matters.
And
that
not
matters.
to diminish anything they do or to take anything away from them, because there's some great chiefs of police and great police officers. But the office of sheriff is very unique to me. Just because of the way the Constitution is structured here. And, just to go back and touch on what you were talking about a few minutes ago, that sometimes, when you have that council dynamic that's over things and they have their own agenda. Certainly not anywhere around here, but if we look, we don't even have to go past Florida's borders. We can all remember in 2018, whenever we passed Amendment 10, and how upset Miami-Dade was that they were going to have to abolish the Miami-Dade Police Department and no longer have an appointed director of public safety that answered to their governing body, but has to have a sheriff now. And it took a significant amount of work and a pretty hefty legal battle to to overcome that. And it wasn't until the legislature actually intervened this session and said, no, Miami-Dade is going to have a sheriff. This was the will of the voters in Florida in 2018. We gave you a grace period. You've yet to comply. You will do this, and you will do it by this date certain. So that for the first time in 40, 50, 60 years, Miami-Dade will actually have an elected sheriff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I'll tell you what you just said that I think our listeners need to pay attention to is how knowledgeable y'all have to be of everything that's going on, because not only do you have to run a department, not only do you have to do good work for the community of solving crimes and all that, you also have to pay attention to the laws that are being made, new laws, what's coming down the pipeline. I really hope our listeners understand how incredibly difficult y'all's job is. You have to be a master of many hats. You have to wear many hats, really.
And you have to have a broad and diverse understanding of what's going on out there. And even if, and then you have to surround yourself with a team that can also be looking what's coming down what's on the horizon that's going to potentially impact your community and your agency, because, laws get passed all the time, and we don't know about it until they're signed, and then all of a sudden it shows up because so many laws are embedded in bills that are passed, and it's not that anybody's trying to do anything bad. It's just, wow, this got signed. We need to be doing this now.
And we're so fortunate in Florida in that regard, like Michelle just said, and you touched on it earlier. We have a couple of meetings a year that we attend with the Florida Sheriff's Association. And those are opportunities not only for us to network with fellow sheriffs, but also to to train on some of those same issues and new laws. But the Sheriff's Association does an absolutely fantastic job of keeping everyone apprised of the legislative process, so that we can track these bills that are beneficial for Florida, good for law enforcement, good for the economy, and actually support these bills and track them. And the Sheriff's Association does a fantastic job. They actually have a legislative delegate that's their sole responsibility during the session is to to track these bills and to keep us all informed. So during the session, we actually have a weekly legislative Zoom call that we get on, where we can discuss and track these bills individually, just to stay apprised and on top of everything.
Oh, wow. And, we're both, we're very lucky here, again, our counties, because we've got great representation. Bobby Payne has Putnam and part of Clay County. Sam Garrison now has part of, as the rest of Clay County. Yep. And we also have Jennifer Bradley, who's got, I think she's got part of Putnam, but maybe not, I'm not sure. But she's got Clay, and then I think Keith Perry is, I'm losing track of the senators. But anyways, I wanted to call them out because they do a great job, and I'm sure they, I couldn't imagine having a representative that doesn't keep you informed. Like, I'm sure there are. I know some people in the House and the Senate that, maybe they're not as in tune to their local community.
Or they're not law enforcement friendly. I mean, there's some that are not law enforcement friendly. And I think, the citizens of Clay County and Putnam County, I would argue, are very pro law enforcement.
Yes.
And
very fortunate with the representation that we have.
It's pro law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not always going to agree, but philosophically we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So let's talk more about so you get newly elected a sheriff. So you got to think back to when that happened. Walk us through that. So you got to understand from listener standpoint, these stories are actually really interesting to y'all. They might not be that interesting, but
talk about this again.
I know, but it is, because these are the questions that if I don't ask, people are going to be, and this is an opportunity having two sheriffs here. So you're newly elected sheriff. And I'm sure it changes, because Sheriff Cook is 4 years ago next year?
I'm 3 years in now.
Yeah. So you're elected. When are you? First of all, when are you sworn in? Is it like state house? You are sworn in the day you're. I mean, you are officially a member of the state house after election and the general election. You don't. There's. I think there is a swearing in, but you are officially like you can be called to duty that day.
Sure. So, with the exception of Duval might be the only outlier because they're a charter county. I think all the other remaining 65, soon to be 66 sheriffs, excepting Duval in the state, all run on the same election cycle as the presidential election. And we take office, is it the first
January.
Tuesday of the year?
Yeah.
I was sworn in for the first time January 3rd of 2017.
Right. So you give some time to transition, and you hope that your predecessor helps you with that. I know that. I mean, if you need it, obviously you're new boss. The reality is,
so there's certain obligations that an office holder has statutorily whenever there's that change in power, and someone else is assuming that role that they have to do, but the reality of it is they don't have to open the doors until
you're sworn in. Yeah.
You're sworn in, and that creates an interesting dynamic in some places because if you're not given access until the day that you take office, you don't have any time between November and January to really get spun up and prep for the role that you're about to assume, and then all of the sudden. Within a couple of days or sometimes a couple of weeks after taking office, you assume every liability, every lawsuit, and then it's kind of intimidating to begin with whenever, let's face it, we work in law enforcement. It's a risky business. We get sued. The majority of the time, they're frivolous, just garbage suits, but it happens. And then all of a sudden, you get listed as a defendant in all of these cases, and it's intimidating to get served these lawsuits. Michelle Cook in her official capacity as sheriff of Clay County, or Gator Deloach in his official capacity as sheriff of Putnam County. That kind of sets you back on your heels a little bit. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you wake up, election's over, and you're like, I mean, are you like, whoa? I mean, what's the shock value of I mean, is it like, okay, or now I know Gator, we won't get into yours because you had to do some
we'll
stuff.
have to devote a whole episode of
Gator had a close election. Let's just say that.
You had a recount and then
6
another
votes and a
so
recount.
I know you were under a lot of stress. Yeah. But what about you, Sheriff Cook? Did you, when it was over and where you knew, and we'll go there, you knew, yeah, all right, it's done, it's finally done.
Sure.
Is there? So I imagine this is what I would think. Shock, a little bit of like, one peace of mind. It's like, elections are brutal. I don't care. You can be unopposed. They're brutal. Election's over. Peace of mind of that. You get that constant. But then there's also that victory you won. You finally, really a lifelong, I would hope, even if it wasn't your lifelong goal, I mean, this is pretty much the coolest thing you can win in politics. I mean, let's just be honest. I would say there are probably people that be like, I'd rather be a sheriff than a governor. I mean, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that would rather do that. But what is it? So step question one is, what does it feel like? And two, how quickly does your spouse put you in your place?
So for me, it was like, hell yeah. All this hard work paid off. And then I got a call from the governor right after the results were made official, so probably about 8:30, asking if I could start the next day after I won. And I was like, I really could use a day off.
Oh, that's right.
And he said, okay, how about next week? I said, okay, deal. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for letting me have a couple of days off. For me, it was just my whole family worked on that campaign, and I wouldn't have been there or won if it wasn't for my husband. And so the kids and my parents and my sister and my brothers, and it was a family, and probably a lot like yours, very much a family event. So it was a relief, but then you get into the office and you realize how hard this job actually is. I mean, this is a very difficult job with lots of up and downs. You could be having a great day. The next thing you know, you're getting legal paperwork because you're being sued again. And you're like, I wasn't even there. And I'm getting, my name's on a legal document. So campaigning is hard. Winning is good. And then the business of doing the job sets in.
I would agree. And, just to kind of dovetail on what Missy said, it sounds cliche, but it takes a village to run a campaign. And had it not been for, Michelle's husband, Don, my wife, Jennifer, and our family and close friends really rallying behind us, we wouldn't be in the positions that we're in now. And then, after you realize you've won the election, I know at least for me, there was kind of this moment where I was like, oh, crap.
What did I do?
What did I get myself into? Fortunately for Michelle and I, Michelle worked for JSO previously, and I came up in the sheriff's office at Putnam, so neither of us can claim ignorance or say that we weren't fully informed about what we were getting ourselves into. But I would call to question anyone who endeavors to run for sheriff or any political office that doesn't really have a servant heart and really want to work for the betterment of their community. And you've got to ask yourself and really take a good, hard, introspective look and say, do I have the time that I'm willing to devote to this? Because it is legitimately nonstop, 24 hours a day. I know Michelle's phone is just like mine. It's not uncommon. It's a regular occurrence. In fact, if the phone doesn't ring in the middle of the night, I get a little worried sometimes. And that, that's
You're checking to see if you have service
3 or 4 times a night. Yeah, has my phone died? What's happened here? But yeah.
Well, and what's really cool about you two, and I know that there's probably a lot of sheriffs like this, but is you've got deep ties to the community. And that's not to say that you can't do a great job if you don't. Let's be very clear. I know you can, especially with police chiefs that are sometimes hired way far away, they do amazing jobs. That's not to say that. But it's kind of cool that when your family's here, you're here, you got...
It's personal.
It's personal, yeah.
The service is personal. And, and I don't want to speak for Gator, but for me, if I don't do good, if I don't do well, if I don't provide good service, I'm not letting a community down. I'm letting a community down, but I'm also letting my family down. I'm also letting my friends down because the ties are so deep here in the community.
No, you're exactly right. And, I can't speak for you, Michelle, but I think I can in this regard anyway. I'm sure just like me, you had opportunities to go and work other places. I had an opportunity back whenever I was handling canines to go overseas and work and handle dogs, making way more money than what I was. But that's not where my heart was. My heart was in Putnam County, where my longtime friends and family are, and that's where I wanted to be, and that's what's kept me grounded. And I'm sure you feel much the same way. So you're right. It's personal to us, and yeah, we're there protecting everyone else, but we're also there protecting our family and our longtime friends, and there's just something really special about it.
Yeah. All right, so I want to give you an opportunity. I'm sorry, Sheriff Cook probably has questions that she wants to get out. So if you have anything, just tell me. I'm ready to talk my questions, Judson. You've been hogging the mic today.
I'm used to that, Gator. He hogs the mic every week. But go ahead.
I apologize.
No.
But I want to let you get a chance to say about, one, first of all, this is most important. If somebody, are y'all hiring now in Putnam County?
Well,
no, but Clay County is.
In fairness, I will say I did just steal one from Michelle, probably one of her best.
Yeah, he's got family down there, though.
We try not to do that. Michelle and I have a very good working relationship. I called her the minute that I found out he was putting in. And it's certainly no slight against Michelle or her staff, but this young guy is from Putnam County, came to work in Clay, and just wanted to be back
back home. Yeah,
Back
people
home.
get that.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm saying like, so where should, so they should go to your website if they want to apply.
Yeah, PutnamSheriff.org.
And that's why I was getting that. I want
Online
people
application process is very simple.
and you
easy
have
to fill
openings
out.
now, so that it's it's harder. I always encourage this every episode. There was a time, and it will be there again, when if you want to get in law enforcement, it will not be a good time to do it because there's so many people out there. Job market the way it is right now, this is an opportunity. If you've ever wanted to do it and you've got the heart to do it, you should probably do it because you might not get a chance again.
Yeah,
this is that one chance in your life.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, follow your heart, right? And this, especially for agencies our size, Putnam County, Clay County Sheriff's Office size, because the growth is coming and you get in now, and there's really a bright future ahead for you when it comes to specialty assignments and promotions. It's not unrealistic to think that somebody who joins today couldn't be in the top echelon of an agency within 12 to 17 years. And when I came on, I didn't make sergeant for 7 years because there wasn't a whole lot of movement. People were just stuck. But our agencies are both going to be growing like crazy. And so somebody who says, I want to go into law enforcement, but I also want to, work my way up. This is a great time to get in.
No, I agree. And I tell people that all the time. This is a great time to start a career in law enforcement, provided you live in the free state of Florida.
Yes.
That's true. That is actually a true statement.
If you look nationally at what's going on in some other states and around the country, I would say absolutely not. That's why you're seeing law enforcement officers from states all over the country flock to Florida
yep.
right now.
And now, if you have, I'm trying to do lightning round.
We got to talk about how we work together.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Okay.
But I want, if really quickly, if you could get anything from the state, like this is what we need, what would you say for you to and it doesn't have to be a budget restriction. I mean, I'm like literally like, because I think you dream big, and then you know how it is. Y'all have to do that all the time. Like this would be the perfect, and this is the how we can get stopgap measures to get there.
Sure.
But I think it's important our listeners understand, because you do as a listener have an ability to push agendas that help the law enforcement. So,
I'll say I'm fiscally very conservative, but we, it's a constant struggle for us to meet the demands of our deputies needing to earn a decent living wage. And unfortunately, that all comes down to money. So that's really our starting salary. We've got to continue to improve. I will say the legislature really did us a solid last year and this year. All the fiscally constrained counties, all 28 or 29 fiscally constrained counties, they dedicated, I think it was 15 or 16 million in recurring funds out of the budget to help us increase our starting salaries. And it certainly helps, but we're still not where we want to be, still not where we need to be.
okay.
And with us, because we're not a fiscally constrained county, we did not get that funding, and our taxes are so low. I tell people that we are the 25th largest in population, Clay County is. We are 52 out of 67 in tax burden for the average citizen, but our public safety funding is 64 out of 67.
Wow.
And so we, we pride ourselves on being conservative, especially when it comes to taxes. But at the same time, law enforcement struggles because these guys, can't raise a family on $41,000 a year.
Right.
But I will say our commission in here in Clay County has been fantastic working with us. And just in the past 3 years, the 3 budgets that I've had to work on, if this budget this year goes through as projected, I will have put in about an additional 10% into everybody's pocket when it comes to pay. But it's you got to thread that needle of being fiscally conservative, but at the same time getting these guys and gals paid what they're worth.
And I should qualify what I was saying earlier. Just like Michelle just said, our county commission has been really great about advocating for us and getting for us everything that they can, and us still live within our means.
Yeah, we're very fortunate again. Not only is our populist pro law enforcement, so our local leaders,
Yes.
And politicians are our leaders. Some of our leaders, but they're very good about that. So before we go, we do want to talk about. So let's talk about the relationship of working together, and then if y'all have some closing remarks that you'd like to get off, we'll do that. So let's talk about it. What's going on with y'all two? Do you guys?
We're building a wall. No, I'm just kidding.
And I'm making her pay for it.
Right. Oh, I'm charging y'all
in
entry
all
fees.
seriousness, so I did have a conversation with Sheriff Billy Woods over in Marion a couple, 3 weeks ago. You guys probably saw the story, made national news about the guy that was on the top of the Rodman Dam with allegedly a bomb, which turned out to be just a backpack and some wires. That guy was from Marion County, so I called Billy the next day and I said, look, if you don't keep your crazy contained over there, I'm building a wall at the county line and you're paying for it, dang it. Again, one of the great things about being sheriff is there's 66, soon to be 67 of us. With very few exceptions, we all work exceptionally well together. Michelle and I have a great relationship. Talk on a regular basis. Sometimes we just call to chat. Sometimes there's emergent issues that we're working on.
Sometimes I get phone calls that Gators in Clay County trespassing, and the citizens call and say there's a Gator sighting.
Oh, that's so funny. Sometimes Gator goes, I'm running late, but I'll make it up. And you're going, not in Clay County, you're not.
I'll piggyback on that. We're very fortunate because even though we have the responsibility for our community, right? Sometimes you got to call on neighboring communities for help, or there's investigations that cross county lines. There's needs that cross county lines, and really, like you said, with very rare exception, all it takes is a phone call saying, "Hey, this is happening. Can we help?" We had that hostage situation 2 Christmases ago, and Putnam County was Johnny on the spot coming in to assist us with that. So it's a professional working relationship that is very easy, and it's something that I don't think any of us take for granted. But I know Gator makes it very easy to work with Putnam County.
That's great. That's great.
And likewise with Michelle, it's just a matter of picking up the phone. And even if we're in the middle of something, all you need to do is make one phone call, and you've got an assurance that as soon as that other sheriff finishes what they're doing, you are their number one priority, and they're going to call you back.
That's great, and I feel like that. Of knowing the sheriffs around this area, I feel like we're very, like you said, it's majority of them anyway. So sure. I don't know all the sheriffs in Florida, but the ones I do, I've always, I feel really good. Like I know a lot of the sheriffs, and they're pretty cool sure. people that do a great job and support each other. So closing remarks. Sheriff Cook, do you want to ask a question or anything else you're burning to get to Gator before then?
He's giving me the crazy eyes. Actually, a funny story. So my husband, I have to tell the first time my husband met with your wife.
Oh gosh.
Yes, we were at a sheriff's or a big event in Gilchrist County called the Gathering of Gilchrist. It was shortly after I was in office, and my husband and I went down there, and Gator's wife Jennifer is fantastic. She's hilarious, and she comes up to Don and says, welcome to the First Wives Club, and and we're gonna go do painting with a twist, and blah 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 blah. And just the look on Don's face, he looks at me, he goes, well, first of all, we're changing the name. It's not the First Wives Club, it's the First Spouses Club. And he looks at her and he goes, I will never do painting with a twist.
That's so funny. But he did do the yoga class that they did. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Gator, Don, please don't get me in trouble. Although if anybody could talk him into doing yoga, it would be Jennifer.
It would be
she
Jennifer.
could talk anybody into anything. She's amazing.
Yeah.
So how about you, Sheriff? Before we Sheriff Deloach, because I got two. So usually I can just go Sheriff, and it's easy. Any closing remarks? Anything you want people to know? Anything? I
kind of springboard on what Michelle was just talking about, and that's really kind of highlighting our spouses, and they're really part of a fantastic support system. And without Jennifer, and I know without Dawn, Michelle and I would not be able to do our jobs effectively. They deal with so much crap, and I'm sure Dawn is just like Jennifer. She's constantly inundated with questions, and she doesn't get compensated for it, I can assure you, but people a lot of times use, or I hate to use the word abuse, but will use the relationship they have with Jennifer to try and get to me. And it's a daunting task to kind of fend that off and push back and say, no, I understand what you're saying. I'll share the concerns with Gator, but I'm not the sheriff. I'll try and help you with your problem and get you steered towards the right person, but that's not me. But Jennifer does an absolutely fantastic job supporting me, taking care of the family, and I know Dawn does the same for Michelle. So they're the real unsung heroes here.
Absolutely.
And I should point out to Jennifer and Don, I just made $200. No, I'm just kidding.
Dang it! No, we weren't supposed to talk about that until we went off the air.
No, although I'm gonna text them both and be like, just listen to the last 2 minutes of the show. That's all you need to listen to this week. If you don't, well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know you guys have to get back to work. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming up.
Absolutely,
Anytime, you're welcome.
pleasure.
And you are listening to Never Off Duty.